Trump says he thinks he will have the honor of taking Cuba. A story by Garrett Downs. President Donald Trump on last Monday said he thinks he will have the honor of taking Cuba, speaking during an executive order signing at the White House. Whether I free it, take it, I think I can do anything I want with it, Trump told reporters in the Oval Office with Vice President J.D. Vance standing behind him. They're a very weakened nation right now. The president comments on taking Cuba came as he carries out a war in Iran that is stretching into its fourth week. Trump has encouraged the people of Iran to dispose their government in that conflict, one of a litany of reasons he has given for starting the war. Trump recently suggested he will turn his sights to Cuba after the U.S. achieves its aims in Iran. He has threatened a friendly takeover of the Caribbean nation, which has been an adversary of the U.S. for decades, except for a brief thaw when Barack Obama was president. The Cuba threats are the latest example of Trump's more aggressive foreign policy during his second term in the White House. In addition to the war in Iran, Trump ordered a military operation that captured the Venezuelan president and leader Nicolas Maduro and has made repeated overtures to acquire Greenland, the Arctic island territory of Denmark. Denmark has repeatedly said Greenland is not for sale. The White House has effectively blockaded Havana from Venezuelan oil after Maduro's capture. That has caused an energy and economic crisis in the island country. Cuba confirmed it was speaking with the Trump administration about a potential solution last week. Trump also confirmed the talks on Monday. I can tell you that they're talking to us. It's a failed nation. They have no oil. They have no nothing, Trump said. They have nice land. Well, let me read to you about a book that one of Trump's wives said he kept on his bedtime nightstand. Mein Kampf is Adolf Hitler's autobiographical manifesto in which he laid out the core ideology of Nazism, especially extreme anti-Semitism, racial hierarchy, and plans for German expansion. It became the foundational text of the Nazi movement and shaped the policies that later fueled the Holocaust and World War II. Here are the central themes Hitler promoted. Racial ideology and anti-Semitism. Jews are portrayed as Germany's enemy, blamed for social, economic, and political problems. Advocates racial purity and elevates the so-called Aryan race, Lebensraum, or living space. Calls for aggressive expansion into Eastern Europe to secure land for Germans. Nationalism and dictatorship, rejects democracy, and promotes a strong authoritarian leader. Propaganda and mass manipulation, emphasizes the power of propaganda to control public opinion and mobilize followers. Ezekiel 39:4 says, Thou shalt fall upon the mountains of Israel, thou and all thy bands, and the people that is with thee. I will give thee unto the ravenous birds of every sort, and to the beasts of the field to be devoured. Now, most of us grew up in a world populated by dictators, but did we ever think our lives would be impacted by our own personal dictator? That is something we only heard of in church, reserved for a person by the name of Antichrist. Welcome to this live broadcast by the Sermonator on Time of the End. If this is your first time viewing, welcome, and if you have been here a time or two, welcome back. I use my avatar because this is not about how I look or who I am. All that will be revealed at a later time, because I don't want my church involved in the personal mission the Holy Spirit has given unto me. But the avatar is just a prop to get attention, as some of you search out the avatar every Monday, and he is not something to hide behind, because the Sermonator is fully attached to him and all over YouTube as well. So when the time comes, they will not have a hard time at all in finding me. So once again, let me read this quote from a German pastor during World War II. First, they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. Pastor Martin Niemöller. Now, I had not planned on another long session today, but things just coming as I was putting it together, so here we go. And though these are biblical presentations from time to time, I may even use secular music because even secular words can have spiritual meanings. But this podcast has always been about the so-called Christian churches of European descent with dark hearts. This is also about the words I present in relation to biblical implications upon the fall of this country and the role the reprobate churches played in it. And I call them reprobate because there are 5 of them listed in the book of Revelation. So again, this is about bringing to the light of day the darkness hidden in the hearts of the churches of European descent and the evil they help unleash upon this world. And continuing with this session, we have gone all the way back to the time when the total darkness began, while we kept looking for greatness along the way. Remember, when they came, the place may have been new to them, but they still had the same dark hearts that flow all the way back to the creation and the flood. Noah and his family may have been the only humans on the ark, but there was also a stowaway, and its name was sin seed. They had a choice to aspire to greatness in the name of the Bible of the living God, but they immediately and systematically started decimating the Native American population for control of the land. And we have come full circle back to what the Avatar has said from its beginning. Darkness hidden in the hearts of churches of European descent, and even MAGA claims religious affiliation. And I will say it time and time again for those that are confused on this so-called found on the Bible lie. The Bibles may have come over with them, but they may as well have thrown them overboard before they got off the boat. See, they had a choice, and that choice goes all the way back to when the Avatar presented the session on these so-called religious people that purchased the first slaves in America. They could have easily told those slavers, no thank you. But the Savior in our Bible wants us to move beyond using humans as forced labor and get from under the darkness of the past, not justify it with Scripture. And what was their more favorite? Genesis 9:25. So he said, Cursed be Canaan, the son of Ham, a servant of servants he shall be to his brothers. Now any true scholar of the Bible knows that Canaan was not the father of the African people. But this can be used against those ignorant of the true meaning of the words in the Bible. So I ask you, was all those dark-skinned people here alongside the Native Americans when they came ashore? Or did they willingly come over on that slave ship and agree to be their laborers? Is it considered great to be able to systematically lynch people solely because you no longer exercise control of their lives? So let's explore how much darkness they can have in their hearts. Trump threatens to put ICE agents in airports over funding impasse. U.S. President Donald Trump threatened to deploy immigration and customs enforcement agents to U.S. airports on Monday if congressional Democrats do not immediately agree to fund airport safety. I will move our brilliant and patriotic ICE agents to the airports where they would do security like no one has ever seen before, Trump wrote on Truth Social on Saturday, more than a month into a partial government shutdown. And he specifically mentioned singling out Haitian travelers. Now MAGA bought on fear. All they have done is take off their Klan hoods and put on masks. So do you see any greatness in this? But because actions like this is only what dark-hearted, evil people consider greatness, we will continue to look for this so-called greatness of MAGA as these sessions continue, despite that old saying, we may be on a wild goose chase. And this country is constantly being torn apart from within and without. But here is more extreme darkness. So I want you to look at this video and bear with me, because you know I have to take the avatar down because I can't paste him to someone else's story. Almost.
Watching. We are going to be discussing instances where people were shot and seriously hurt. So keep in mind these stories and some of the images from them may be disturbing. You may have heard about the shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security. The gist is funding has run out for DHS, and before passing any new funding, Democrats are insisting on putting in place reasonable accountability measures for ICE and Border Patrol after the horrific killings and overreach we have seen. But Republicans are so far refusing to do things as simple as requiring the masks to come off and requiring ICE to follow the same basic standards that local police follow every day when it comes to things like use of force or getting an actual judicial warrant before bashing someone's door in and dragging them away. Republicans would rather shut down DHS than pass a funding bill with basic oversight. I don't know how Republicans can look at what happened to Renee Good and Alex Preddy, or see the videos of peaceful protesters getting tear gassed and tackled, or see lawful observers getting their windows smashed and getting dragged out of their cars and think, this is fine, but I am not budging. We have a rogue agency, and we need to rein it in. DHS officials even testified to Congress that filming their activities in public is perfectly legal, yet they threaten citizens with arrest and take their pictures for unknown purposes. Sometimes they spray them in the face point blank with pepper spray. Sometimes they gang tackle them and shoot them in the back 10 times. So today, I want to make the problem just a bit more clear to Republicans here in the Senate who are trying to sweep it under the rug by discussing some other ICE and Border Patrol shootings you may have missed. Because the painful reality is that in addition to the tragic killings of Alex Preddy and Renee Good, which rightfully got national attention, there are other cases where ICE and Border Patrol shot people with no clear cause and lied about it afterwards. We have to put an end to this alarming pattern, and that means we cannot let Republicans ignore it. So I am putting a spotlight on some of the details of other shootings ICE and Border Patrol do not want the American people to hear about. Miramar Martinez is a U.S. citizen and a teacher's assistant in Chicago. Last year, a Border Patrol agent rammed her car and then shot her 5 times. And what happened next? The agent texted his colleagues bragging about it. He drove the vehicle immediately from Chicago to Maine, and the Trump administration tried to label Martinez a domestic terrorist. But those lies came face to face with reality in court, and the charges against Martinez were dropped by the Department of Justice when the story DHS made up was completely contradicted by the evidence. They said,
Okay, bear with me while I get Avatar back up. Now, what I'm about to say is not part of my session for today, but I have to say it anyway because I can't help but wonder if some of those long lines that we've been seeing in the news at airport TSA checkpoints are going to thin out now. Because I want to read this blurb once again, where I said MAGA bought on fear. All they have done is take off their Klan hoods and put on masks, and now they're going into the airports. So, listen to this. Once again, the Gestapo was Nazi Germany's secret state police, created in 1933 and used by Adolf Hitler to identify, terrorize, and eliminate anyone the regime considered an enemy. And you heard some of that from that senator's video. So once again, I wanted you to see another disturbing video, if for nothing else but the shock value highlighting the darkness that has come out and covering any light that remained. And I used it to refresh your memory in case you have forgotten when the avatar told you about that other well-known police unit I just repeated. Is this what the voters asked for when they said they wanted a crackdown on immigration? Remember that it was the avatar that told you one of the first priorities of a dictator is to turn the country into a police state. And to do that, you have to first control the citizens. And they are consistent in their attempts to control the news as well. Listen to this story by Elliot Force. Trump threatens to arrest journalists over Iran war coverage as he sets FCC on fake news outlets. Donald Trump has threatened to charge reporters with treason for spreading false information about the war in Iran in a lengthy post on Truth Social on Sunday evening. In the 400-word post, the president claimed that Iran is a master of media manipulation and has been feeding false information and AI-generated videos to the very appreciative fake news media. He also thanked Brendan Carr, the chairman of the FCC, Federal Communications Commission, for looking into revoking the broadcast licenses of corrupt and highly unpatriotic news organizations. Trump said that video showing buildings and ships on fire has been generated by AI, including a video of the USS Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier on fire in the ocean. Not only was it not burning, it was not even shot at. Iran knows better than to do that, the president wrote. The story was knowingly fake, and in a certain way you can say that those media outlets that generated it should be brought up on charges in capital letters for treason, for the dissemination of false information. Trump continued. Treason is one of the most serious crimes that can be committed against the U.S. According to federal law, treason is defined as a person who owes allegiance to the U.S., levying war against the country, or giving aid and comfort to its enemies. A person convicted of treason is subject to a minimum of 5 years in prison and a minimum of $10,000 fine or even the death penalty. Listen, the death penalty, think of the implication of those words. Now can you see why I keep the avatar separate from my church? If they come after me while I was in church, they will have no compunction about shooting innocent church people trying to protect me. So listen to this follow-on story by Maria Paula Mayares Torres. FCC's car threatens broadcast licenses over news coverage. FCC Chairman Brendan Carr threatened broadcasters with cancellation of their licenses if they did not correct course on news coverage. Broadcasters that are running hoaxes and news distortions, also known as the fake news, have a chance now to correct course before their license renewals come up, Carr said in a social media post on last Saturday. The law is clear. Broadcasters must operate in the public interest, and they will lose their licenses if they do not. Carr posted his warning on top of a post from President Donald Trump complaining about coverage of the U.S.-Israeli strikes on Iran. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth also criticized news outlets for war coverage that he says make the president look bad. But there's also an upside. Trump's direct calls yields media exclusive. This story by Kim Eun-jung. Since the start of the U.S. military operation against Iran, Epic Fury, on the 28th of last month, President Donald Trump has been found to have conducted more than 30 phone interviews with the media. He directly takes calls from reporters, responding to short calls of about 5 to 10 minutes, and Semaphore highlighted this on the 16th, stating, "A new form of journalism has been born. As a result, media outlets are devising strategies to conduct phone interviews with Trump. It is said that the success rate is particularly high when calling him in the evening when he is unable to sleep and watching TV, or after he finishes golf and is in a good mood." But listen, it is not just the news. A dictator needs control of everything, including laws. Remember what Senator Murray just said in her video. We'll listen to this story by Alexander Bolton. Trump allies plan Senate floor takeover to pass Save America Act. President Trump's allies are planning to take over the Senate floor this week in a bid to pass the Safeguard America Voter Eligibility Act, setting up a major test for Senate Majority Leader John Thune, who is under pressure from Trump and the MAGA base to extend the debate over voting reform for as long as possible. GOP senators are playing their cards close to the vest ahead of this week's marathon debate over the Save America Act, which would require people registering to vote to show documented proof of citizenship. But they are bracing for long hours and possible late nights in a bid to build momentum for the bill, which already has broad public support. A recent Harvard-Harris poll of 1,999 registered voters found that 71%, must be 71% all MAGA, support Save America Act. Trump allies, frustrated that they aren't able to force Democrats to stage a talking filibuster to block the bill, are pressing Thune to keep the measure on the floor as long as possible to force Democrats to defend their opposition. Senator Mike Lee, Republican Utah, a leading proponent of the bill, says Trump wants to see Republicans go all out and is envisioning an epic floor fight, like the 2-month battle that preceded the Senate passage of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. Lee, a close Trump ally, suggested the president will closely watch this week's Senate debate. Trump has put intense pressure on Thune to get the bill through the upper chamber, and last week said he would not sign any legislation, God Save America, until the Save America Act hits its desk. And the disease is spreading. This story is by Noah Schumann. Could the EU's new migration reform lead to ICE-style practices in Europe? A controversial proposal aimed at increasing the return of irregular migrants from the EU has been approved at the committee level this week. However, NGOs warn that parts of the plan could pave the way for enforcement practices resembling those associated with the controversial U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The proposal, known as the EU Return Regulation, would create what the European Commission calls a common European system for returns, designate and designed to make deportation procedures across the bloc faster and more effective. Among the measures under discussion are so-called return hubs, deportation centers located outside the EU, where rejected asylum seekers could be sent while awaiting removal. Think maybe this is why I say I don't pray for devils. And this type of hatred has always been in the dark-hearted Europeans, and the church was not immune. They used the excuse that they were fleeing religious persecution, but it was only the persecution from within. Apparently, someone in the Church of England saw something in their new ideas not in line with existing church doctrine. So it became a case of one hater not accepting a vile doctrine of another hater. But they brought this darkness and disease to the New World, from the northernmost point of Canada all the way to the southern tip of Chile and South America and Cape Horn. All original cultures in between were eradicated or had their cultures changed because they only fought each other for dominance, while the Europeans darkened the entire landscape. And just when it seemed a ray of sunshine might have been coming back into this dark country, the blasphemer covers it in darkness all over again. But let me say this before we go there to those of you that have followed the avatar from the beginning. Now, my introductory lead-in to each session is redundant to you, but I mostly repeat it so that anyone new that may join us live or watch a recording will know the purpose of these sessions, and prayerfully there will be enough to perk their interest to review the past sessions to get an understanding that this began with the history of the dark-hearted churches of European descent and their role in the destruction of this country leading up to the blasphemer in our midst today. In our March 10th section, it appears their greatness may have been found, but it was no longer hidden in their dark hearts, but out in the open for all the world to see. But the hatred only subsided for a while and retreated back into their dark hearts and fermented until a blaspheming demon in a red hat brought it out again, resulting in the downward spiral of this country in the name of greatness. Now, we have been in session for 19 months now. And have you seen any greatness yet? And we are still within the first 300 years of the European settlement of this country. And it has now been 60 weeks since this so-called great MAGA country slipped into total darkness with the blessings of some end times churches. And this session marks 12 weeks into the new year as the found darkness came in. And don't forget that because we have brought the dark-hearted Christian churches of European descent all the way to 2026, the sessions have moved from historical to sermonic in nature because I have already presented their dark past. So now we have to look at the darkness still in their hearts. Now that we have come forward to 2026, the focus will remain on the circus, but we will continue to look at more darkness hidden in the hearts of the most well-known dark-hearted Christian congregations of our time. And it's because of that darkness that I don't pray for devils unless they repent of their reprobate heart. Now, you can question my compassion as a preacher all you want because that is your right. But I don't have empathy for a life only defined by spewing hatred and venom. The Most High will be their judge. This is what my prayers are for: continued salvation of the righteous. I have said before that I don't have a heart for devils that lead souls astray and help usher them toward perdition. If they choose to die following a blasphemer, I choose not to waste prayer on them. Did the remaining 11 disciples mourn or lament for Judas? No, they replaced him and built the church. Even our benefactor Paul turned a reprobate over to the Lord. Just read 2 Timothy 4 and 14. So the only times I pray for devils is during my blessings over a meal, and it goes, Father, I love you and thank you for sending your Son to shed his precious blood for all the sinners of the world. And the main sinner is the one that just said he is glad that someone died, and the avatar will present that to you next week, but you probably have already heard it in the news. And just like my hero the Tishbrite, I'm not afraid of any devil. But as I said, I don't want them to come after me through my church. Just like the prophets of old, I'm in this battle by myself and guided by the Holy Spirit. So one more time, the words of that German pastor. First, they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out, because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out, because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. And I constantly repeat that, so hopefully it will sink in that this country and this world is getting to the point where if you don't speak out, you will be left behind and outrun. And unless the Creator brings a speedy end to this dispensation, they will come. And it will not be my intent to make these sessions seem as if it is just another news outlet on YouTube or a Bible study. Because when all is said and done, it is still about the church's role in this iniquity overtaking this country. My charge is to keep you aware and focused as we are nearing the end of days as foretold in Scripture. And to adequately do that, I have to apply the Bible to the events that are going on in this country and the world. So I want you to listen to more of the hatred and racism emanating from that den of iniquity. So let me take the avatar down while I play an audio clip from Roland Martin on YouTube.
White Republicans in Tennessee are absolutely nuts. Tennessee State Representative Justin Pearson needed to fact check Representative Michelle Renault after she used the Bible to literally justify the founding fathers being slave owners. They shouldn't be judged because slavery was normalized during their time. Here is the verbal lashing she received from a descendant of a slave.
Representative Renault.
Thank you for the question. As far as our founding fathers and those that owned slavery, it is important not to dilute history. We need to understand and know what that is so that we don't repeat those mistakes. But the Bible also says that we will be judged in the time of our culture. And at that time, it was a common practice. Not saying that's right or wrong. The Bible actually does instruct those who do own slaves on how to treat them and to treat them fairly and kindly. But our founding fathers definitely believe that all men were created equal, and it was those beliefs that moved us from the position of slavery to where we are today. So this particular legislation does not advocate to teach those things. I think we have many other pieces of civic education that likely does include that, but this intention for this legislation is for that to not necessarily be included.
Representative Pearson.
Why did Amazon send me $20,000? Because
but this intention for this legislation is for that to not necessarily be included.
Representative Pearson.
It is nearly unconscionable to believe that you just articulated the theological vision of enslavers in this Capitol in the year 2026 as though it was okay. Because here's your problem. The Bible, which was written in many different iterations, but is articulating a time of thousands of years ago, was used as justification for enslavement that happened thousands of years later, 400 years ago in our country. And so even if you're trying to articulate, as you are incorrectly, that the Bible was somehow giving permission to slavery, that would have been in the era in which it was happening. It wouldn't be used as a theological justification just 400 years ago in our nation's history. But what is worse, and what is deeply disturbing by what you have just said is not how you are saying, and that was wrong or immoral. There is no question that slavery was immoral. And you shouldn't need a Bible to know that. And there were always people who were antithetical to the antebellum South's iteration of chattel slavery. The people who were enslaved, who were kidnapped from the continent of Africa and brought here against their will. And I am a Christian, and I am a 7th-generation Tennessean. I I have read the Bible from front to back, and the stories about love, about who Christ is, about loving thy neighbor and loving God is what we are told to profess. So anyone who misused the Bible to enslave people, misuse the Bible to keep people in bondage, they were wrong then as you are wrong now.
The Avatar has said the exact same thing since its beginning, and here it is a year later, and that type of conversation is coming up in the state senate. Well, Luke 6:44 says, "For each tree is known and identified by its own fruit. For figs are not picked from thorn bushes, nor is a cluster of grapes picked from a briar bush." And just like a church lady once told me, "Yes, you're right, preacher. I can't judge you, but I can inspect your fruit. So if your fruit is dark, your heart is dark." And then Matthew 12:36 says, "But I say unto you, that every idle word that men shall speak, they shall give account thereof in the day of judgment. For by thy words thou shalt be justified, and by thy words thou shalt be condemned." So here is more. Let me play another audio clip for you, and you will recognize this voice.
Predicted Osama bin Laden would knock out the World Trade Center. I made that prediction a year before he did it. I said, you better get him. He's a bad guy. I watched him be interviewed one time, and I said, that's a bad guy. You better get him. 1 year before, exactly. I wrote it in a book. You can even check about a year before the World Trade Center then came down. President Clinton actually had a shot at him, and he didn't take it. Unfortunately, I'm not blaming him for that, but he didn't take it. And he ended up knocking down the World Trade Center, but I predicted that too. I predicted a lot of things.
Okay, let me get Avatar back up. Okay. Listen to this concerning the audio that you just heard. Trump said his book 26 years ago predicted 9/11, Laden's plan, except it didn't. Here's a fact check by Arish Shabra. Trump has been making this claim for years. The book, The Realtor Politician, and maybe that's why he's taking countries, because he's a real estate person at heart. Anyway, the book The Realtor Politician speaks about is the America We Deserve, which came out in the year 2000 and updated on March 17, 2026. The story was, U.S. President Donald Trump is hardly short of big claims, but he recycled an old and massive one this week. I predicted Osama bin Laden would knock out the World Trade Center. I made that prediction a year before he did it, he said, referring to the September 11, 2001 attacks. I wrote it in a book, he said at a press briefing on last Monday, while speaking about the ongoing U.S.-Israel war with Iran, except that he's been making this claim for years now. The book he speaks about is America We Deserve, which came out around a year and a half before 9/11. The book did mention Osama bin Laden. It also mentioned the World Trade Center. The prediction that Trump claims he made is at best an extrapolation. Back in 2018, when he was serving his first stint as president, Trump had written on his Twitter, since renamed X by Elon Musk, I pointed him laid out in my book just before, capital letters so you know it was him, the attack on the World Trade Center. The book, the reporter says, actually did not do any more than point to the terror leader as one of the many threats to U.S. security reported by the U.S. news agency Associated Press in its fact check. And of course, we should have captured Osama bin Laden long before we did. I pointed him out in my book just before the attack on the World Trade Center. President Bill Clinton famously missed his shot. We paid Pakistan billions of dollars, and they never told us he was living there. Fools, he wrote in another social media post. In this 2000 book, as part of his criticism of Bill Clinton's policies, Trump wrote, "One day we're told that a shadowy figure with no fixed address named Osama bin Laden is public enemy number one, and U.S. jet fighters lay waste to his camp in Afghanistan. He escapes back under some rock, and a few news cycles later, is on to a new enemy and new crisis. As for the mention of the World Trade Center, Trump did indeed say that the U.S. was at risk of a terror attack that would make the 1933 World Trade Center bombing pale by comparison. He was referring to the February 1993 van bombing attack below the North Tower of the World Trade Center. A 606-kilogram bomb was intended to make the tower collapse onto the South Tower, taking down both skyscrapers and killing tens of thousands of people. The plan failed in scale, though 6 people died and over 1,000 were injured. On Tuesday, Trump again said he told the then U.S. administration, "You better take him out." The book did not say that, AP reported. He's also said he made prediction on Laden when nobody really knew who he was. In fact, Laden was well known to the CIA as he fought in the American-backed operations against the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in the 1980s. Meanwhile, another section of the book does address the possibility of terrorist attacks against the United States. Still, it makes no specific mention of Al-Qaeda or Osama bin Laden being responsible for such an attack. Originally reported by Devanshi Basu on Mandatory. Revelation 21:8 says, "But the fearful and unbelieving and the abominable and murderers and whoremongers and sorcerers and idolaters and all liars," let me say that again, all liars shall have their part in the lake of fire which burneth with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. And I repeated all liars because Adam and Eve, even though the devil is the father of lie, Adam and Eve told the first lies, because all the devil did was sit there and look stupid when he got his pronouncement. But there is more. This story is by Caitlin Correll, senior U.S. political reporter. Trump tears into weak official who resigned over Iran war as his allies pile on crazed egomaniac. Donald Trump said he's glad that his top counterterrorism official resigned over the war with Iran, in an extraordinary and unprecedented move for this administration. National Counterterrorism Center Director Joe Kent announced he was stepping down over his objections to the U.S. launching joint strikes with Israel. When I read his statement, I realized that it's a good thing that he's out. This is Trump. Because he said that Iran was not a threat. Iran was a threat. Every country realized that Iran was a threat, the president insisted. He said there would have been a nuclear holocaust if he did not strike Iran this month. When somebody is working with us that says they don't think Iran is a threat, we don't want those people, Trump added. Kent said in a post to X on Tuesday that he could not, in good conscience, support the ongoing war in Iran through his role under the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. Iran posed no imminent threat to our nation, and it's clear that we started this war due to pressure from Israel and its powerful American lobby, he wrote. Now shortly, you will hear the reprobate Johnson spin on this debacle, because now they are saying he was under investigation for giving away classified info before he resigned. And with that, I have another wild goose story, and it goes, what is good for the goose is good for the gander. Listen to this. Trump's PAC is selling access to national security briefings, and Congress is livid. By Nick Moyer, NJ.com. On March 12th, a political action committee affiliated with President Donald Trump sent out a fundraising email promising wealthy donors something extraordinary: access to private national security briefings. Included within the email is a photo of Trump saluting as coffins bearing 6 Army reservists killed by an Iranian drone strike in Kuwait were unloaded at Dover Air Force Base on March 7. Above the photo, a highlighter yellow box with bold red text reads, "Claim your spot." The message offers supporters exclusive spots in a national security briefing membership, promising direct, unfiltered updates from Trump on threats facing America. The email was sent by Never Surrender Incorporated, a PAC associated with Trump's 2024 presidential campaign. It has since become a political flashpoint, spilling over into Wednesday's Senate Intelligence Committee hearing on Capitol Hill. CIA Director John Ratcliffe and Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard faced pointed questions about the PAC's email during their testimony in front of congressional lawmakers. Senator Mark Kelly, Democrat, Arizona, a retired U.S. Navy captain and also accused of treason, asked both officials whether Trump donors should be granted access to his national security briefings, which often involve classified information. Gabbard said she was not familiar with that document. Kelly countered that it had been made public as of last week. "We'll get you a copy," he told her. Ratcliffe also said he was unaware of the email's contents and referenced the Hatch Act of 1939. That law bars federal employees from using their positions and authority to benefit any political party, candidate, or group. So I don't know what that document is, Ratcliffe said of the email, but regardless of what it says, it didn't happen. The Hatch Act would prevent me in an apolitical role from engaging in that. I'm not aware that anything like that happened. Later in the hearing, Senator John Ossoff, Democrat from Georgia, showed Gabbard and Ratcliffe a printed copy of the fundraising email. The American people need to know that the President of the United States is fundraising for his political campaign and his PAC using images of American service members killed in action. And it's a disgrace, Ossoff said. Trump has denied any knowledge of or involvement in the email that Never Surrender sent out. Asked about the email on March 15th, the president said it was an appropriate message before adding that he didn't see it. Trump additionally downplayed the criticism he received for wearing a branded USA baseball hat during the dignified transfer at Dover Air Force Base. A photo of the president donning the hat while saluting was featured in the PAC's fundraising email. End of story. Now, not only is the blasphemer extorting the country into ruin, he is also selling the country to anyone with money to pay. No one apparently has questioned who had access to the bathroom at Mar-a-Lago filled with secret documents that a Cuban judge dismissed. But whenever the blasphemer is blacked into a corner, he comes out with more untruths or threats of violence. This story is by Kim Myong-il. Trump says, Iran war end timing will be decided with Netanyahu. U.S. President Donald Trump stated that the timing of the end of the war with Iran will be decided jointly with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. President Trump said in a phone interview with the Israeli outlet The Times of Israel on the 8th that the decision on when to end the war with Iran would be a mutual one, made with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, claiming Iran would have destroyed Israel if the two had not been around. President Trump emphasized Iran was going to destroy Israel and everything else around it. We worked together. We've destroyed a country that wanted to destroy Israel. And I want to pause in this story for a minute and remind you of when the Avatar has told you that God is not going to need no one to help him defend Israel when that time comes. He's not going to have anyone up there boasting like this blasphemer, saying, Lord, did not help you destroy a threat to Israel. It ain't going to happen. But anyway, this is not a sermon, so let me get back to the story. When asked whether he would unilaterally decide the timing of the war's end or of it, President Netanyahu would have to say, President Trump responded, I think it's mutual a little bit. We've been talking, adding, I'll make a decision at the right time, but everything's going to be taken into account. In doing so, President Trump suggested that while Netanyahu's opinions will be reflected, changing course, the final decision rests with the U.S. president. When asked if Israel could continue the war even after the U.S. decides to halt airstrikes on Iran, he said, I don't think it's going to be necessary. The Times of Israel noted that Trump's answers pointed to the significant degree of influence Netanyahu would appear to have over Trump's decision-making in the war. 1 Kings 22:2 says, And it came to pass in the 3rd year that Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, came down to the king of Israel. And the king of Israel said unto his servants, Know ye that Ramoth in Gilead is ours, and we be still, and take it not out of the hand of the king of Syria? And he said unto Jehoshaphat, Wilt thou go with me to battle to Ramoth Gilead? And Jehoshaphat said to the king of Israel, Ahab was that king, I am as thou art, my people as thy people, and my horses as thy horses. So do you see any greatness in any of this? This is why I say I don't pray for devils. As you can see, the evil just won't go away on its own. And as long as we remain in this dispensation, we will be surrounded by it. Therefore, the only safe place is to be a follower of Yeshua, the Christ, the true Savior, as the blasphemer has become their Savior, because he appeals to the darkness in their own hearts. And if you preach against the evil, you will be labeled as a woke church. But listen, more blessed to be a woke church, because all dead churches are going to the lake of fire spoken of in Revelation. So as we travel to the end of 2025 and found ourselves surrounded by evil, we had to ask ourselves, who are we? Are we the church, Christians, or followers of Yeshua? The reprobate church is filled with dark hearts and now are called Christian nationalists and only use the Trump Bible. Just go to any MAGA church on any given Sunday, including the small rural churches that bred and still breed reprobates, like our little gavel-wielding reprobate from Louisiana, controlling the house in the name of the blasphemer, and MAGA, who are continually protecting the blasphemer and pushing his agenda instead of the welfare of this country and all the souls within, no matter their color, creed, or former nationality. During oppressor, Mike Johnson attacked Joe Kent's resignation, who held a top national intelligence position in the Trump administration, second only to DNI Chief Tulsi Gabbard, claiming he didn't have the correct information on Iran after he resigned in protest. Jebus Johnson is jumping through hoops with his lies, trying to convince the American people that Iran was about to strike the United States and cause mass casualties. Iran causing imminent U.S. mass casualties is a new one. Does the DNI have this intelligence? Of course not. Johnson spews lies after lies to defend the indefensible. By Joe Amato. And this story is by Rishab Rathi. Mike Johnson rejects Joe Clint's Iran claim there was clearly an imminent threat. Speaker Mike Johnson addressed recent remarks on the Iran war made by former director of the National Counterterrorism Center. During an appearance on Hannity on Fox News, Johnson rejected Kent's assertion that Iran posed no imminent threat and dismissed claims that the conflict was influenced by Israeli lobbying within the Trump administration. His remarks come amid growing debate within the U.S. over the intelligence and rationale behind the operation. Mike Johnson defends intelligence and threat assessment on Iran, responding to a question from host Sean Hannity on how Iran did not constitute an imminent threat. Johnson said Yeah, that's a great question. I'm not sure what Joe Kent is reading, but it's not the same intel that I've seen. He underscored his position by noting his role within the Gang of Eight, a bipartisan group of 8 top-ranking U.S. congressional leaders, stating that he had access to all classified briefings before, during, and after the operation. Johnson described the intelligence as exquisite, asserting that it clearly indicated an imminent threat to the U.S. and its interests. He maintained the commander-in-chief did exactly the right thing. He had to protect American lives. We knew that those ballistic missiles that they were stockpiling and preparing were going to be fired at our troops and our civilians and our installations in this region. So the commander-in-chief did what he had to do. He further remarked that Kent's position appeared to have shifted abruptly, calling him an outlier and stating that others within the administration who had access to intelligence supported the decision. In a press conference previously, Johnson also questioned Kent's access to classified information, stating, "I don't know where Joe Kent is getting his information, but he wasn't in those briefings clearly." Kent's remark came in a resignation letter posted online approximately an hour before Johnson's comments, in which he stated that Iran posed no imminent threat to the U.S. He also alleged that the administration started this war due to pressure from Israel and its powerful American lobby. Johnson rejected this claim, calling the notion that U.S. policy was driven by foreign interests clearly wrong. The White House dismissed Kent's assertion, stating that the president had compelling evidence of an impending Iranian attack. But don't take mine or anybody else's words. Let us hear them out of that reprobate's own mouth. So let me pull the audio down while I play that clip.
How is that not an imminent threat?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm not sure what Joe Kent is reading, but it's not the same intel that I've seen. Look, I'm on the Gang of Eight. We got all the briefings before this operation in Iran began. We got briefings during and then after it commenced. And the intelligence was exquisite. It was very clear this was an imminent threat to the United States and America's interest, and the commander-in-chief did exactly the right thing. He had to protect American lives. We knew that those ballistic missiles that they were stockpiling and preparing were going to be fired at our troops and our civilians and our installations in the region. And so the commander-in-chief did what he had to do. Joe Kent seemed to understand that until about 24 hours ago. I'm not sure what happened there. There's lots of discussion about it on Capitol Hill, as you can imagine. We're trying to get down to the bottom of it, but he is an outlier. I'm telling you, as was noted earlier, Bongino and others have said, everyone else in the administration and everyone who sees the actual intelligence understands clearly that the president did what he had to do.
And with all the evil emanating from the highest office in this country, and you just heard that pathetic reprobate that's supposed to be a Christian, what is the stance of the church? We have to ask, what is being preached and taught across the pulpits? Well, let's highlight some of the hidden darkness perpetrated by the so-called Christian churches. Since this is about the darkness hidden within the churches, here is more of their blasphemy and idolatry. Now, I don't get the avatar involved in a scandalous political issues, but since this involved a person of the dark-hearted church, I must bring it out. A story by Olivia Johnson, a Missouri pastor suspended after church learned she managed Epstein's private island, and this is going to take the place of any Charlie Kirk churches for the week, for this session. So, hear what she said. A pastor in Missouri was suspended last week after it was discovered she worked for and managed the private island of late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein for nearly a year. Remember what the Avatar once said about creeping into the church? Well, the story goes on to say on Thursday, Bishop Robert Farr of the Missouri Conference of the United Methodist Church placed Reverend Stephanie L. Remington on leave pending a review by the Episcopal Office. Remington reportedly worked as Epstein's administrative assistant and temporary property manager of his private island, Little St. James, from August 2018 to May 2019. Epstein was arrested just 2 months later in July 2019 for sex trafficking crimes and then died in his cell by alleged suicide in August. Despite having worked closely with the disgraced financier, Remington told United Methodist News that she never saw Epstein or anyone commit abuse on the island. However, she did admit that when she accepted the job, she knew Epstein was a registered sex offender who had served 18 months for the conviction. I never saw anything, Remington told the publication. I knew him for the last 9 months of his life, well after he served time for the things that he was accused of doing. So once again, the same old doctrine of deception by professing church people, just in later generations. And once again, this is still blasphemy at the highest levels in Christianity. And it is sad because in the end, their righteous judgment is always clouded by their dark hearts. Luke 13:27 says, But he shall say, I tell you, I know you not whence you are. Depart from me, all ye workers of iniquity. But it doesn't end there. Ephesians 6:11 says, To us, put on the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. So rest assured, the Avatar will continue to post yet more examples of dark doctrine, hidden within the hearts of the dark-hearted churches of European descent. But be that as it may, the ring-leading blasphemer has still been quite busy as usual. Remember, in the midst of all the turmoil in the world, the end result is still a 24/7 clown show with the clown at every turn. And I will forever repeat that Turkish proverb. When the clown moves into the palace, the clown doesn't become a king. Instead, the palace becomes a circus, and is getting more and more evident as these sessions go along. So let's get back to the clown show, because when you think it could not get more absurd, the clowns come to the rescue with yet another stupid act, destroying any possibility of this becoming a great country. And here is some more of the reasons why, lest we forget. Listen to this major display of incompetence to protect the blasphemer. And because of time, I'm just going to do a brief headline review. A story by Caitlin Carrell, senior U.S. political reporter, once again. Kash Patel gutted Special Iran Intelligence Unit days before Operation Epic Fury. Last week, FBI Director Kash Patel fired a dozen agents who worked on the case investigating Donald Trump for taking top-secret materials to his Mar-a-Lago residence after his first term was over. Those agents have now been revealed to be part of an elite group specializing in accessing threats from Iran, according to 2 reports. Patel told Fox News that the agents were spying on him. I guess so, flying around in that government airplane with his girlfriend, but let's get back to the story. I'm not preaching again. And now, Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, while they were private citizens as part of former Special Counsel Jack Smith's investigation into Trump. So here are the ramifications. Trump's strategy may be backfiring, a story by thedailydigest.com. U.S. President Donald Trump has gotten himself into a no-win situation against Iran, but that has not stopped him or his closest aides and allies from trying to spin the ongoing war as one that the United States is currently winning. Leavitt claims she has spent nearly an hour on the phone rebutting the claims made by CNN. However, the reporting is, if accurate, provided a concerning look into the apparatus meant to prevent the president from making mistakes like the one Trump has stumbled into now with his war to destroy Iran. CNN revealed that the president's national security team failed to fully account for the potential consequences of what some officials have described as a worst-case scenario now facing the administration. According to sources who spoke with the news outlet, the worst-case scenario is the blockading of the Straits of Hormuz. And if you have been to the gas pump lately, you can see why. Now, this next story is by thedailydigest.com. Russian oil is bound for Cuba, defying Trump's blockade. Vladimir Putin has sent 730,000 barrels of crude oil on a tanker as part of a humanitarian aid to the island of Cuba, and if nothing happens, the tanker should arrive on Cuban soil around March 23, this being the day. So I'll have to look at the news. Now, the reason I brought that out is because one wrong move and the end of days will be upon us. Listen to this story by the Daily Digest. The chilling nuclear warning Russia sent to the U.S. Estonia could be in trouble. Tensions escalate along NATO's eastern border following threats from a Russian official. Moscow has warned it will target a NATO member state with nuclear weapons if that country hosts allied nuclear armaments. On February 22nd, Kremlin Press Secretary Dmitry Peskov issued a new nuclear threat from Russia towards a NATO member state. The nuclear threat was aimed at Estonia and was in response to a remark from an important official. So, let's end tonight's session with this. So I'm going to take the avatar down for the found time and show a photo while I close out for tonight. Trump to appear on commemorative gold coin, breaking tradition. No living president has ever had a coin or paper money, minute or coin after him. The U.S. Commission of Fine Arts, whose members were appointed by Trump, voted unanimously on Thursday to approve the design which depicts Trump leaning over a desk with clenched fists. Luke 20:21 says, and they asked him, saying, Master, we know that thou sayest and teachest rightly, neither acceptest thou the person of any, but teachest the way of God truly. Is it lawful for us to give tribute unto Caesar or no? But he perceived their craftiness, and said unto them, Why tempt ye me? Shew me a penny. Whose image and superscription hath it? They answered and said, Caesar's. And he said unto them, Render therefore unto Caesar the things which be Caesar's, and to God the things which be God's. And it's sad to say, on this coin they have "In God We Trust." So remember, Martin Luther King had an unfulfilled dream. I have a vision. Selah.